And we're back in the black, playing more Pathfinder, and today we're gonna talk about damaging spells. So there's a lot of damaging spells, and I guess the first question is going to be, what class should you spec into if you want to do a lot of damage spells? I would say the Sorceress is the superior choice, and that's because they get so many spells per day. The Wizard has a faster progression, but he gets a very few spells, so he's more suited to something like buffing, especially in the early game, more than he is to damage spells overall. So here I created a damage orc. This is, by the way, not a build guide. If you want to build guides, then check out the links down in the description. But this is going to be a guide on what spells to pick up on every level, damage-wise. So you probably want to have a mix of buff spells and other spells, but this is just going to cover the damaging spells. The buff guide will also be found below. So, on level 0, you don't have any good damaging spells. The only thing that would be worth casting is Daze, but it's not like damaging spell, so we're not gonna cover it too much. We're gonna go directly into level 1 spell. The best level 1 spell when you start off the game is going to be Burning Hands. It is 1d4 points of fire damage per caster level to a maximum of 5d4. They can half the damage with a successful reflex save, but that's all they can do. So if you have something like spell specialization in Burning Hands, you can on the first level deal 3d4 of fire damage, which is almost guaranteed to land on the first enemies that they get to. So it's a very good level 1 spell, but when you get a little bit further into the game, it's probably, and you're able to pick up a full party of members, it's probably not going to be the best spell. It's a little bit wonky, you need to get close to stuff, it's in a cone and everything, it can hit your own creature, so it's a little bit harder to really navigate around the Burning Hands. But what I instead would recommend is Magic Missile. What's so good about Magic Missile is that there's no way for your opponents, unless they have, there's like special shields and stuff that can get around this, but in most cases the Magic Missile damage can't be prevented, and that's what you need. If you're playing this on higher difficulties, which is what the guide is geared towards, then you need to have spells where they either don't allow saves or you target their lowest saves, because there's 3 types of saves in this game. There's the will save, there's a fortitude save, and there's a reflex save. And depending on what characters you're up against, if you're up against a sneaky rogue character, for instance, they usually have a high reflex save. A tanky character will usually have a high fortitude, and someone like a mage or wizard will have a high will save. So you need to target the lowest saves all the time, especially on the higher difficulties, else your spells will never get off, they will never deal any damage. That's very important to keep in mind. Magic Missile, though, is an exception to this. It ignores everything. You will always be able to damage things with Magic Missile. It's very useful to have Magic Missile because you can also empower this. You can use meta magic feats later on in the game, and there's a couple of enemies which are like almost immune to all types of magic, but Magic Missile can often still get to them. There's things like wisps, for instance, where you need Magic Missile. Except for that, I can't really recommend the other ones. The Shocking Grasp is the most damaging level 1 spell. It is 1d6 points of electricity damage per caster level, so you can get a lot of Shocking Grasp damage, but I would still recommend Burning Hands over this because they can deal damage to more enemies, which is usually more valuable than the Shocking Grasp. And it's also a ranged touch attack, so you need to have a decent amount of dexterity to deal that damage. On second level, you will be able to pick up Burning Arc, and Burning Arc is amazing. It's what, by the way, if you want to see my playthrough, then link down in the description. Burning Arc is what is... It's amazing. I can't even put it in words how amazing this spell is. It's reflex save to half the damage, but it deals 1d6 points of fire damage per caster level to the primary target, and then it reduces and deals half the damage and half the damage, half the damage. So it's kind of like a earlier version of the lightning strike, or I think it's called, which we're gonna see later on, but you get it very, very early on level 2, and if they pass the reflex save, you still get half the damage in. That's what's so important. You really need to try to bypass the damage. The second most important spell I would say on level 2 is Bone Shaker. Bone Shaker deals 3d6 points of damage plus 1d6 points of additional points of damage per 2 caster levels. But this is usually not as good as Burning Arc, because Burning Arc usually hits a lot of enemies. Bone Shaker only hits 1, but there's a couple of enemies which have a very, very high reflex save, and if you're up against something like that, then you would prioritize use the Bone Shaker instead. I also know that for some special types of builds, if you have a dexterity type build, for instance, if you have something that can sneak attack, then Scorching Ray can be quite good. But in normal case, I would definitely recommend Burning Arc as the first spell and Bone Shaker as the second spell that you pick up on this level. On 3rd level, you get the signature spell for all the wizards and the sorcerers, and whenever you think about magic and role-playing games, at least I think about Fireball. It's like the most typical spell. It's a very, very good spell. It's the initiation spell that you're going to use for almost the entire game, I would say. Usually what you're going to do with Fireball is not super good when you pick it up after you've initiated a fight, because after you've initiated a fight, if you cast this and you have characters in melee, you're going to hurt your characters as much as you hurt the other characters. So it's usually not super good in that case, but when you pick this up, especially if you have multiple spellcasters, you will in some fights be able to kill them off before they get even a single attack in, because you can initiate on your opponents out of their threat range before they can aggro you, and that way you can kill many opponents with fireballs before they even get a single attack off. So it's very, very strong when you get this. I would say that probably the 2nd strongest spell on this level is Lightning Bolt. It attacks in a line. It is 1d6 points of electricity damage per level, which is quite high. But it's a little bit wonky to navigate with the line thing. I usually prefer the Fireball to the Lightning Bolt. On level 4, you will pick up Bone Shatter, probably the most notable one. You will also have Controlled Fireball. Controlled Fireball deals minimum damage to your own creatures, but usually at this level you will have been able to pick up resistances from fire anyways from other spells and stuff like that. So usually I don't think Controlled Fireball is that important. It's more important to pick up Bone Shatter. Bone Shatter is what you use when you can't use a reflex save based attack on your opponents. It's very good. It's like an upgraded Bone Shaker essentially. It is 1d6 points of damage per caster level, and of course all these spells you can use meta magic feats on to get them stronger, and that's what I definitely recommend. If you have a spellcaster which is a damage spellcaster and you need to pick up some meta magic so that you can have empowered Bone Shatters and stuff like that in the late game. On level 5 you don't get much. Level 5 is like the worst level for damaging spells. There's nothing here that I could really recommend. Everything is a little bit wonky in my opinion. Shadow Evocation has the benefit that it increases the level of the spell that you're casting, which makes it harder for your enemies to resist that spell, but they also get an additional will save that if they pass the will save they don't take the damage. So I don't really like Shadow Evocation, because giving your opponents more saves is usually not a good thing. There's a lot of spells which I don't think are that good damaging wise, because they give too much saves and too good saves for your opponents, and they're just gonna pass them every time. You get Cloud Kill, but Cloud Kill is strong, yes, when you pick it up, but it's so hard to, you know, put this down in combat without, you know, dealing as much damage to your own creatures as you are to your opponent's creatures. I'm not really a fan of it. On level 6 though, you will pick up Chain Lightning, and this is probably my favorite damaging spell in the game. What's so good about Chain Lightning is that you hit one target, but then it spreads to every target, and if you compare this to Burning Arc deals less and less damage as it bounces. Chain Lightning deals the same damage with every bounce, so it deals an insane amount of damage, and it can usually hit everything on the battlefield. So everything takes 1d6 points of damage, and you will clear up like all the small foes, all the non-boss creatures will just get cleared up in a couple of chain lightnings, which is amazing. If you do something single targety, then I would instead recommend Disintegrate. It deals 2d6 points of damage per caster level, which is an insane amount of damage, of course, but it can only deal to one target within medium range. It's Fortitude to reduce the damage. There is the Circle of Death, of course. I don't like that this requires Diamond Dust. I can't really recommend it. Sometimes the Circle of Death will be better than Chain Lightning, but I don't know. I don't like component spells, so I'm not gonna recommend that. On level 7 you get a very strong spell called Finger of Death. This is the most damaging spell in the game, I think. Well, there's ways like you can use raise with sneak attacks and stuff like that, but if you only consider the spell without any buffs or anything, I think the Finger of Death is the most damaging spell in the game. It deals 10 points of damage per caster level. If the target's Fortitude saving throw succeeds, it instead takes 3d6 points of damage plus 1 per caster level. So this is pretty good, but note that it's death magic, so if your opponents are immune to death magic, a lot of bosses and stuff like that will be immune to death magic. They won't take damage from Finger of Death, but it's usually very strong against like reflex save the characters like rogues and stuff like that. It's very, very strong. On level 8, there's not much really on level 8, and this is a level 16 character, so it will only have one spell from level 8, and there's not much I could recommend there. I picked up Death Clutch, which can slay something with 200 or less hit points, but at this point you will be up against the last bosses in the game, and they will all have more than 200 hit points. Death Clutch won't do much. You can kill a few roguelike characters with this, but that's about it. So it's a bit of a shorter guide today, but I hope it helped out if you're new to this game, or if you're interested in what damaging spells to pick up on each level, especially for the high difficulties. Then I hope that I gave you a good picture of what to pick up. Thanks so much for watching, and see you next time.